Okay, once again, we're at Fordham University with Dr. James Fisher, professor of cultural history at Fordham, and we're here to talk about, for our profile series, Stephen Crist and his contribution to the game. Crist, I was introduced to Crist as a writer at the Times, and then he went on to obviously found the Racing Times, and he's just gone on from there. He's a huge influence in the sport today. Jim, give me your take on Crist's most significant contribution to horse racing.
Well, he was an unlikely figure. You know, he's a very urbane guy, comes from New York City. His mom was a very well-known movie critic back in the old New York Herald Tribune and on Today's Show. So there's nothing in his background that would predict he'd become this very well-known racing rider and handicapper and expert. And there's always would be a suspicion that someone like that might be a bit of a dabbler or dilettante, but he was a total degenerate. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I just mean someone who was completely devoted to the facts and figures, the analytical dimension, which the rest of us would find incredibly tedious and impossible to really pursue more than for a couple of hours at a time in our lives. He was really he really walked the walk, and so he became a kind of a very unlikely authority in a sport which he really didn't have the kind of background that would have predicted that.
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, we know about Andy Byer, and Stephen Crist also is another Harvard guy, and I actually ran into, I was researching this. I ran into, there's a guy by the name of Victor Niederhofer that wrote The Education of a Speculator, and he's out of Harvard, and he was a horse player at a certain point in his gen. I mean, what is it about Cambridge? Do they need a Gamblers Anonymous up there?
Well, yeah. Well, there's that tradition, of course. We have Pete Axthum and Stephen Bochco and David Milch, at Yale. It's partly it is a kind of an Ivy League tradition of being able to kind of like reconcile or kind of blend these kind of very disparate worlds. But again, Crist has been a lifer. I mean, he's absolutely been devoted. This is his vocation, and so he's made the most of it. And he's someone who's very, very serious about this. And he's not someone. Although he's written short stories, he's got a literary bent. His main preoccupation is the day-to-day business of attempting to pick winners.